Good morning again, and welcome to the January session of the North Dakota After-School Professional Learning Community. I'm Kristen Knorr, Network Lead of the North Dakota After-School Network. We have some special guests today who I'll introduce in a little bit. But thank you so much for joining this session, whether this is the first time that you've been to the session or you have attended all of them. Welcome. Today we are going to talk about our virtual learning norms. We'll again cover the structure of this professional learning community, and then we'll dive into our featured topic, which is not youth voice as this slide says, but it is onboarding and professionalism. If you do want to hear about youth voice, check out December's session, which is in the Padlet. You will find a link to the Padlet in the chat box where all sessions will be recorded and saved in there so that you can go back if you missed one or if you want to revisit, along with resources that were shared during each session. And then, as always, we will end the last half of this session with open discussion. Our virtual learning norms. We ask that you are present and open-minded. Please set away any distractions that you have for the next hour. This is a time for you to really ask questions, to extend your knowledge, to take healthy risks, and also think about how to apply your learning to other situations that you may experience. The after-school professional learning community is designed to be a safe, neutral, and solution-focused place to talk about any challenges as well as successes that you have. We want to provide you an opportunity for reflective practice, to take a second to pause and really think about what you're doing in your programs, how you're impacting youth and families, how you're supporting staff, and how you're supporting yourself as well. And each person is valued, and your thoughts, opinions, and anything that you share is valued in this space. So with that, we're going to dive right into our featured session for January. And we're focusing on the leadership and management domain of the quality standards. Specifically, we're focusing on the 3 quality standard indicators here on the screen. Leadership and management indicator number 11, our staff receive training that is relevant to their position and responsibilities. For new staff, we provide orientation and onboarding before staff begin interacting with youth. Leadership and management indicator number 10, our staff follow a code of conduct. We're clear about our expectations for staff behavior, and we have well-defined disciplinary measures if the code of conduct is broken. And last but not least, leadership and management indicator number 18, we have a process for recruiting staff and strive to attract and retain quality staff who are representative of the youth that we serve. So you may find that we're touching on other indicators, but these are the 3 main indicators that we're going to focus on for January's session. And we have 2 featured guests with us today. Kicking it off is going to be Angelica from the National After-School Association, and then Elise will be sharing from the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Red River Valley how they implement some of the onboarding and professionalism things to make sure that they have a strong recruitment and retention program. So before we turn it over to our featured guest, are there any questions, clarifications, or wondering? All right, with that, feel free to put questions or comments in the chat box as we go along, or take yourself off mute. This is an open space for you to share. And with that, I will turn it over to Angelica. So thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, thank you. All right, let me set up my screen to share. I have a few slides. You guys can see the PowerPoint well? All right. So thank you so much for inviting me to join this call and share NA's resources with you all. My name is Angelica Portillo, and I am the Director of Advocacy and Workforce Initiatives at NAA. If you're not familiar with the NAA, we are a national association. We deploy our mission through people-centered programs and partnerships, building equity, access, and connection to create a strong value profession that benefits kids, families, and communities. As y'all are covering the topics of onboarding and professionalism of staff, when Kristen reached out, I immediately thought of sharing NA's Equitable Hiring Guide. Just to give context into why we created this, as many as you know, all industries are facing workforce challenges, and what we've come to find is that hiring and staff development is a great place to start. And hiring is difficult in all fields and with many opportunities to get it wrong. There's trading pay disparities, implicit bias in hiring decisions, and favoritism in mentoring and promotion. And it gets especially tough in youth development. Many leaders are striving to advance equity in their field, but we face additional challenges when it comes to hiring when we think of the positions that we're offering. In youth development, we have more challenges. We have part-time jobs, some of them are low wages with minimal benefits, budget restrictions, and different regulatory requirements that different organizations have. And so when we created the Equitable Hiring Guide, we had two goals. One is to bring awareness to the common missteps that lead to a lack of staff diversity and non-inclusive workplaces, and to provide information, tools, and templates to support the adoption of new practices. And so today, I'm just going to talk you through the 3 sections of the guide, and then we might have time to explore it later. So the first section is with recruitment and hiring. So the themes of the guide would be advance pay equity, make positions more accessible, attract a diverse candidate pool, and minimize bias. And some of the resources you'll find, so through each section, I'll give 2 resources. So this one is the candidate rubric, evaluation rubric. And so by using this, your team is more likely to review candidates fairly across the board rather than relying on intuition or fit, which can lead to biased hiring. This tool, the second tool, is the gender decoder. So in your job descriptions, you may favor male candidates over females one. For example, men may more likely describe themselves as driven, self-reliant, and confident. So this is a great tool to use for that. The second part is onboarding and professional development, which y'all are talking mostly about today. And so this part of the guide ensures that you have an inclusive culture, you're explicitly describe expectations, establish career pathways, and offer multiple reporting and escalation options. And 2 of the tools that you'll find in that section are the inclusive onboarding checklist. A lot of people, every time I present this is probably one of their favorite things. So it's a really great tool that we have in there. And then the second one focuses on building a better workplace for women. So this research focuses on what matters most to working mothers with the aim of providing corporations and organizations with actionable solutions to improve their attraction and retention of this large and critical segment of the workforce. So this is a great tool as well. And then third is performance reviews and feedback. So in this section, you'll see how you can create a uniform experience, mitigate, and make performance more transparent. And some of the tools you'll find in here are the 5 steps to a performance evaluation system. This article lays out how to create a performance evaluation system and includes downloadable templates, which are always great. And then this article provides a deep dive on gender discrimination and giving feedback on how to avoid it. So, that was kind of like the fast pitch of the Equitable Hiring Guide. And it's really important because there's bias in youth development and hiring staff. So this really happens when we are just trying to get through the hiring process. Like we're low on staff, we just need to get people in the door. There's sometimes just a single person making the decisions. And I think something that we encounter a lot is the unspoken cultural norms of like, this is just how we do it. This is how it's always been done. And we're going to continue doing that. And so in hiring only from past program participants, I know that's challenging for some programs, but some programs only want to pull from people that have already been through their program. So just a few reminders. Bias shows up when we're rushed, tired, stressed, or hungry, which happens a lot in the out of school time, I know, for a lot of our staff. So we just want to remind people to slow down, ask for a second opinion, receive and act on feedback, and to take care of yourselves and others. All right, And of course, if there's time later, I'd love for us to come back and look more at the guide and kind of deep dive into what tools would help us and answer any questions you'll have.
Thanks so much, Angelica, for sharing that real quick overview. If you want to look through it more in depth, there is a link to that guide in the Padlet, so feel free to link through that. And then if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, or we'll be able to have some open discussion time after our next featured guest shares. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elise, who is going to share what this looks like in real time.
All right, well, thank you, Kristen. As she said, I am Elise. I am the program director for the Boys and Girls Club of the Red River Valley. I don't have anything nearly as fancy as Angelica did to show you. So unfortunately, you're just gonna have to listen to me chat. But Kristen reached out to me about some of the things that we do here at the Boys and Girls Club to help with our training and onboarding of all of our new staff that we get. I know as a licensed childcare provider in North Dakota, we are constantly being challenged with new changes, as well as being a part of the Boys and Girls Club of America. They have new things that they come up with every year too. So this has been a process for us, actually. It has been evolving and fluid for many years. But as a licensed entity, I'm sure most of you have experienced fingerprint delays. And what do you do with these staff then? Now that you've hired them, but you can't even have them at a site yet because you're going to get dinged with licensing. So unfortunately, fingerprints have been taking 2 weeks-ish, if not more. And that's if we get them turned around pretty quickly. So what we tried to do is make sure that all of their trainings that they can be doing are being done during that time frame while they're waiting on their fingerprints. So they have about 8 hours of online training that we assign them. So most of you probably understand Growing Futures and the getting started, that training that every single person who works in a childcare has to go through. I know it gives them 15 credit hours, but it only takes them about 4, maybe 3 hours to actually complete that training. We also get reimbursed for snack through the Department of Public Instruction. So because of that, our staff have to go through a food safety and sanitation training. So we have them do that before they start also. And then because safety is one of the big things under the Boys and Girls Club of America, we do have them do 6 different online trainings through our organization that are duty to report, which is a mandated reporting requirement, abuse risk management, child and club safety 101. It happened to me, keeping your Boys and Girls Club safe, and preventing sexual activity between young children. So all of these are actually Boys and Girls Club requirements. And so we have them all complete those before they start also. And then because we are also a part of the 21st Century Grant, we do the AfterSchool 7. So we took all of the videos from the AfterSchool 7 that were provided by the by SEEK and put them into a PowerPoint for the staff to watch. And then at the end, we make a little quiz just to make sure that they actually got something out of it. We're watching them, seeing what they do. After that, we then have them paired up with a supervisor from a different site, and they go and watch what they do. And then on day 2, they start learning a little bit more about how to be more hands-on. And by day 3, they start running the group under the leadership of the supervisor. So it gives them that time to learn the job at different sites, because we run 13 different sites and we all have the same rules, but everybody's looks a little different. And so when it comes to recruitment and retention, finding that, okay, you have your fingerprints, now go to the site and be a staff, isn't working for us because they get overwhelmed really easily by any child behaviors and quit. So we spend a lot of time just rehiring. So spending the extra few days to give them that opportunity to shadow another staff and learn under the supervision of someone else has actually been pretty beneficial for us, and our retention has actually increased quite a bit. So that's what we do for our trainings. Also, once they start and are actually a staff with us, they also have to do about 13 hours of continuing education credits for licensing. And that is very difficult too, especially for those of us who are in the school age sector, because almost every training is geared for birth to 5. So having my staff take trainings on SIDS or supporting breastfeeding in childcare is not useful. So we've kind of had to take this back on ourselves also. And as an organization, we provide our staff with 2 trainings every month that are relevant to what they actually do. We get these all approved through Growing Futures so that they will always be able to apply these to their learning records for licensing. But within our organization, we also offer first aid and CPR 5 times a year. So we have 9 Red Cross certified instructors within our organization. So we're able to offer first aid and CPR every about 2 months to be able to keep everybody up to date on theirs. We have 3 mandatory all staff trainings because we know that staff turnover the beginning of every school year, the beginning of every spring, January timeframe, and right before summer. So we touch base with all of our staff at a mandatory training, and we go over licensing regulations, what we're doing as an organization, things that we want to see, upcoming events, all that kind of stuff that we want everybody to know. I am also a CPI certified instructor. So I am an instructor for the Crisis Prevention Institute. So I offer a training with our staff on nonviolent de-escalation techniques twice a year. It's only twice a year because it is a 6-hour course, and getting staff to come to a 6-hour course is kind of difficult too. Other than that, we have 6 BGC certified trainers, and they deliver some other content that we have. So some of the things that we have done with our staff have been topics such as promoting positive behavior, programming in your space, cultural responsiveness and inclusion, getting and using youth input, promoting positive peer relations, and youth as leaders. We have also utilized the University of Minnesota Extension to lead some trainings for us. So they come in once in the fall and once in the spring. He just did a training on adverse childhood experiences for us. And now this spring we'll be doing one on dilemmas in youth work. So it's been really helpful to us to have that partner organization too, so that it's not just us talking at our staff all the time. With that, at our mandatory all staffs, so I should probably caveat this with, we also do all of our trainings in the evenings because we know that 90% of our staff are college students, and they go to college classes all day long, and then they start working for us all afternoon, and they're not done until 6 o'clock. So I don't really have access to most of these staff then until that site closing time. So we do pretty much all of these trainings starting at 6:30 in the evenings. We don't do any weekend ones either. So that's a long day. And coming to these all staffs when it's mandatory, we do provide food for our staff then. One of our mandatory all staff meetings is actually tonight. And so we do make that a celebrations night for us too. We give out awards to our staff, and we actually bring in a catered meal for them. So that way we're not having them trying to find food and get to us in a timely fashion. We're just going to do that for them. We also pay our staff to come to every single training that we do. We do not ask them to come to anything that we won't pay them for. That includes first aid and CPR, even though it is a mandatory training. we do pay them for that. So as we tell them, you could go get certified somewhere else, but if you come to ours, you get the same certification and you get paid to be there. So it gets our participation up a little more. And then for the online trainings that they do ahead of time, they provide us with the certificate of completion or a screenshot showing that they completed it. And they submit it to our HR person and she records their hours for them, and they are still paid for the amount of time that it should have taken them to do those. So that is training and onboarding. Any questions so far?
I have a question, Elise. Since you implemented like such a robust training schedule, have you noticed any difference in retention of staff, or have you noticed a reduction in turnover? I mean, I know you have college students, so there's always going to be some kind of turnover, but have you noticed a change?
Gradually over the years, yes. It was when I first was starting here 10 years ago, it was really nothing to see an entire staff turnover at semester change and retain a couple of them. In the time that we've been making these changes and making this concentrated effort to ensure that the staff are ready for the job that they're about to take on, and giving them these very specific trainings geared towards what they do and not just a training because they have to have a training, then honestly, we have staff that have been with us for 5+ years now at this point, because we're able to give them these trainings that are relevant to them, and it's great on their resume. And so even though they may have started as a freshman in college, they're still working all the way up into their senior year of college because they're trying to maintain what we're doing here also, and have had really good positive feedback from them about how they feel like they can add to what we're doing and ask questions and give feedback, and we're able to respond to that in a way that makes their opinions feel validated too. And I know one of the biggest complaints that we had right away was that they just felt like they were hired, fingerprinted, and thrown to the wolves because we all were just desperate for staff. And so it took a lot of changes for us too. And it does leave us short staffed sometimes, trying to give those new hires that opportunity to get that training in before they actually start as a staff. But in the long run, it really has helped the retention. All right, if there's no other questions there, I'll move on to expectations for staff behavior and disciplinary measures. So I'll be the first to admit, we're not fantastic in this area yet. This is an ongoing area of revamp for us. We do have a staff code of conduct that we do make them sign when they first start, and we go over it annually and have them sign off on it annually. It talks about safety, it talks about their personal responsibility, it talks about the fact that the reason they work here is for the youth and that they need to come in ready to be that person for the youth. And it talks about just some basics about being a respectful staff member and doing your part, because we are guests in the schools we're in, and we need to make sure that we are being respectful of those spaces also. We have on-site things that we call exemplary employee forms and disciplinary measure forms. So any staff can fill this out on any person because we can't be everywhere at once. But if you're a staff member that is working with somebody else and they are just knocking it out of the park that day and they are doing something really fantastic, I want to know about it, and I want it to be something that's easy for them to just quickly fill out a form and send that off. But at the same time, if you're working with somebody and they aren't following our policy and procedures and our rules, and you have grave concerns about things that they're doing, We also want that to be an easy procedure to report to, so that we can follow up and make sure that these things are being taken care of. One of the other things that we do is we do a weekly reminder in our staff newsletter. So we have a Facebook group and then a hard copy of a newsletter that goes to every staff member. And it has policy reminders, so different things that we see happen at sites, you know, like making sure that closet doors are shut and making sure we're not propping open doors, and that everybody has their staff shirts on and their phones are put away, you know, just those basic things. So we just keep a weekly reminder going for them. But then it also has a high fives. So those times when staff have been doing something a little above and beyond, then we want to make sure to give them a shout out every week. I know when I've been at sites and seen the staff pick up the newsletter, they skip all the way down to the high fives first and look at those because they want to see if their name made it, which is fine. And so then every 2 weeks we draw for a gift card and then give a gift card and a new staff shirt to the staff member that wins in the staff high fives. Other than that, having a well-defined disciplinary measure is actually, we're finding to be pretty difficult. Big things, yes, we will address, and if we have to let people go for those, okay. But for the little things, like not wearing your staff shirt or something like that, it's really difficult to try to have that conversation with a staff member who's going to be like, oh, for God's sakes, this is stupid, I'm just not going to work here then. And so we're constantly towing that line of how do you get these maybe not fully invested staff members to follow the rules and regulations and our expected code of conduct, and what do we really need from them and how can we help them be those staff members then. So there's lots of work to be done here yet, and I am welcoming any other ideas other staff or other organizations have when it comes to this, because I don't think there's any one and done kind of way of helping these.
Thank you so much, Elise, for sharing all of that. As mentioned several times in the chat, there are links to these resources that have been touched on. So if you want to see what the Boys and Girls Club Code of Conduct looks like, there's a copy of it there. There's also a copy of the National After School Association Code of Ethics. So if that's something that you have in your organization that you want to look at, or it's something that you don't have yet that you'd like to look at, these are two resources that you can build off of. And on Elise's, on your last note there, I mean, I think that's a great kickoff point to, you know, thank you so much for acknowledging the challenge of disciplinary measures, right? Because we want our staff to stay because we need them to be there for the students so that you can, it can serve the kids that are in your program. But how do you effectively do that while also making sure that you're holding staff accountable? I hear this challenge from programs big or small, whether you're 21st century or licensed or not licensed. So it's a reality. Does anybody have something that they have found that has been effective, or do you have anything to share on that note about holding staff accountable?
Hi, I just want to say that I'm very grateful for this meeting. It's very reassuring to know that we in Jamestown aren't the only ones struggling. And great, I love it. I love the ideas that you provided in this meeting. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Lynette. You know, I think that this shows that there's challenges and there isn't an easy fix for some of these things. I wish that there was, but but I'm glad that we have this space to share. And I think with that, we're going to stop the formal portion